Hello, I'm Ryan Bohl, a Stratfor Middle East and North Africa analyst at RANE. This podcast is brought to you by RANE Worldview, powered by Stratfor, the world's leading geopolitical intelligence platform. Learn more at worldview.stratfor.com.
You're listening to RANE's Essential Geopolitics podcast, powered by Stratfor. I'm Emily Donahue. Europe is facing an energy crisis. As we've discussed on this podcast recently, the price of natural gas is at an all-time high. Winter is approaching, and that brings with it an increased demand for fossil fuels like coal and oil. Meanwhile, Russia is poised to come to Europe's aid. But will it? That's a question for Stratfor Eurasia analyst at RANE, Matthew Orr. Welcome, Matthew.
Hi, Emily. It's great to be here.
What's behind Europe's energy crisis?
Yeah, the short answer is that there's a lot of factors. And to start, I think we should be clear about what this crisis is, right? So as you mentioned, we've seen record electricity prices across several countries in Europe, as well as record natural gas prices. The two are closely linked because natural gas is obviously often used for electricity generation. As far as what is the reason for these high prices, there, as with any energy market, it's a very complex situation, right? So there's the decline of kind of the traditional gas suppliers to Western Europe, places like Norway and Algeria. There's also a very peculiar situation in the global LNG market where LNG that would often go to Europe is actually all going to Asia because Asia is amidst its own energy crisis, and a lot of this is being driven by high oil prices and generally the inflationary pressures kind of that are global right now. And so all of that just means that prices for natural gas are indeed hitting all-time highs in Europe.
Well, can you explain to me a little more about what Russia's role in this situation is?
Yeah, so as far as what Gazprom's role in the crisis is, it depends on who you ask. So, of course, in the Kremlin in Russia, President Putin very clearly said that the idea that Russia was manipulating the market was a baseless accusation and that there was no hard evidence for it. But if you look at certain places, it actually is quite easy to find evidence for it. So basically, how kind of the natural gas market works in Europe is that prices go up in the winter and they go down in the summer when demand tends to be lower. And it's during the summer that European states fill their storage with the cheaper gas to then use in the winter. And so the storage traditionally builds in the summer. This year, starting way back as early as late spring, it was noticeable that storage in Europe was not refilling as fast as normal. And that became much clearer by midsummer and, of course, by late summer, where storage was not being filled at the same rate, and it became clear that it was Gazprom specifically that was not filling its European storage and was not sending additional gas so that other countries or other holders could fill their storage. And the reason for this is that Gazprom did not want to book additional transit volumes through Ukraine. And so if you look at historical transit volumes through Ukraine, you'll see that Russia has been keeping just to the bare minimum of its contracts, but in some cases it's shipping less gas than it's already getting paid for. So it's under shipping the gas. This all contributes to this environment where less gas is getting to Europe than is normal, and so it's kind of resonated and across Europe led to several analysts and even politicians say that Gazprom is engaging in a market manipulation effort. These accusations were then bolstered by reporting that basically suggested that this was a plot hatched by Gazprom several months ago with two major objectives. Those two objectives were, firstly, to get the Nord Stream 2 pipeline certified, basically to use high prices to demonstrate that the pipeline is in fact necessary. And then, of course, Putin has done precisely that, where at a recent forum he said that the easiest way to alleviate the gas crunch in Europe would be to certify and allow the speedy operation of the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. And then the Kremlin's second objective is to push European states back into long-term gas contracts. Basically, over the past 10, 15 years, there's been this tendency where the companies that buy Russian gas have been moving away from long-term contracts with Gazprom and moving towards reliance on the spot market, where basically they just buy gas from whoever at whatever the spot price is. And that's not good for the Kremlin because the spot market tends to be more competitive and therefore cheaper than the long-term contract. So that would hurt Gazprom's margins. And so as the global energy markets become more competitive in the future through things like more LNG and even in Europe, new resources in the Eastern Mediterranean and the Black Sea, Gazprom very correctly felt threatened that its margins could take an unnecessary hit if it didn't demonstrate to Europe the necessity of long-term contracts and of Nord Stream 2 to deliver it.
Matthew, how long is this situation going to continue?
Yeah, that's really the golden question, and it's not exactly clear. There are some indications. Putin has said himself that potentially even as soon as November 8th, additional volumes would begin coming into Europe, and Gazprom would begin filling its underfilled storage across the continent. But there's really no guarantee that that's the case. In fact, Gazprom has not booked more gas deliveries to Europe across the main routes, those being through Poland on the Yamal pipeline and, of course, through Ukraine's large transit system. The Nord Stream 1 pipeline is basically at capacity, near capacity, and the other route, the kind of Turk Stream southern route, doesn't fully reach the key European markets, places like Germany and Austria and the Netherlands, etc. And so it doesn't appear that truly significant volumes could come in until probably closer to December. And even in that case, it's unclear that Gazprom will be truly willing to do so in such volumes that it would return gas prices to anywhere near their historic norms. And so this situation looks like it's most likely going to persist for several months and probably through the winter. But a lot will depend on exactly how cold this European winter is.
What are the long-term consequences of this kind of gas strategy from Russia?
Yeah, another really important question. Looking historically, there's been kind of a consensus that this kind of gas politics, the so-called energy weapon, has not really been in Gazprom's interest because basically, yes, they get certain short-term benefits, short-term profit increases from higher prices, but in the long term, it incentivizes these European states to move away from Russian gas that they feel is coercive and to basically diversify and move towards other energy sources. And so it's looking like this will be yet another incident that will go down kind of into history books as a reason to move away from Russian gas as it provides both a political stimulus because countries don't like being subject to coercion, and then of course a financial stimulus as gas is quite expensive. Putin has said himself that the prices are maybe even too high because it will just stimulate and make alternatives to gas more competitive.
Matthew Orr is Stratfor Eurasia analyst at RANE. Thank you, Matthew.
Thank you, Emily.
The geopolitical tensions between Russia and the West have reached a defining moment. You can find out what will happen next with RANE Worldview, powered by Stratfor. You can try it out. Sign up for the free Worldview newsletter at stratfor.com/worldview. That's stratfor.com/worldview. I'm Emily Donahue. Thanks for listening.